Hello, my love. Welcome. Today I wanted to have this informal chat with you about our lineage and our roots and why is it so important to connect with them. I think a lot of us who had a traumatic experience in our childhood with maybe one or more than one family members, we oftentimes find ourselves wanting to disconnect. We understandably reject those family members because they hurt us, right? We reject their behavior and we suffer a lot from it. So we want to disconnect and we want to start fresh. We oftentimes say, I'm not going to be like them. And for those of us who've been on this planet for some time, we also see that oftentimes those things that we want to disconnect from and what we reject and we say we're not going to be like that, we oftentimes play out. And so we want to disconnect even more because we say, oh my God, this is incredible. They have so much effect on me. And then we do a lot of therapy, maybe some of us, right? Or other healing. And my story is not different. I probably should share a little bit about it. I came into the family of two people who had an alcohol addiction before I was born. I never knew my father, never knew how he looked because my mom destroyed all of the pictures. So he was like a ghost in my life because I knew he lived nearby, but he never reached out, and his family either. I did have this sense of compassion to both of them because I knew that suffering. I observed my mother seriously being possessed by that addiction, and I saw how she didn't have a will over it. She couldn't. So my mother was never available for me emotionally. She was not even available for herself emotionally. And I observed a lot of times how she was pulled towards something that was hurting her and me. And at some time in my life, I decided that I can't take this action and leave. So at about 5 or 6 years old, I left her when there was another, party in the kitchen. And I went to my grandmother, which, thank goodness, provided some sense of security. And there was food on the table, even though there was nothing luxurious. We still lived in extreme poverty, but at least it was calm. But there was no emotional connection there either. And I literally felt like I was raising myself. I didn't have anybody to ask for help. I really felt like I was just alone. And moreover, people in the community kind of prejudged me because they sort of thought that apple doesn't fall too far from a tree. So I naturally had this feeling that I am meant to do differently this lifetime. I'm meant to do differently for many reasons. One of them was that I saw how at least 3 generations back, women in my family didn't have fathers. And they never saw them. They didn't know how they looked. So I knew that we are replaying the same story, and I knew that I meant to end it with my life. But I wanted to end it by ending the connection with them. So, my mother passed away before she turned 40 from this addiction. Then my great-grandmother, another family member, passed away very soon after that. And then it was just me and my grandmother remaining. And then I moved overseas, and I was doing a lot of things that never, ever any of the people in my family did. And that was rewarding, and I was always on this path of searching for deeper meaning and also searching for my inner truth and healing. So there was a time in my life when I participated in a sweat lodge. And before entering to the lodge, the shaman asked me what was my intention. So I told her my intention was to cut off from my lineage, cut off from the programming that I received, because I saw how it was playing out in my life still, even though I rejected it. And she smiled and she kindly said, my darling, you need to reconnect with them and not cut them off. I trusted her, although I didn't really understand exactly why. And it took me many years to now come into some sort of understanding why is it so, and I'm certainly still on the path. And I wanted to share with you, those of you who possibly had a similar experience, more intense, maybe less intense, but still have that rejection of some family members and rejection of some qualities in you that maybe you accepted from your family members. And I wanted to give you a new perspective that I'm discovering right now. We as people are always born into systems. We're born into multiple systems. One is, for example, a solar system, right? So we are all interconnected and we are part of that. We are born into a system of living beings on Earth. We are born into a system of human beings on Earth. A country, a city, and of course our family, our lineage. And that system has one of the greatest effect on us, because it's literally what gave us this body, what gave us this experience of being. Imagine that this lineage that I'm talking about is not, yes, it is combined of individuals, and you probably can say it's like 126 individuals in your family tree, right? 7 generations before you that like seriously affect us, although the lineage is almost unlimited, right? So imagine that lineage being a consciousness on its own. It's an entity. That system is an entity. It's like an egregor. It has its own desires, it has its own goals, it has its own past and future, and it has its own traumas, and it has its own programming. And that lineage wants to survive. That's the first goal, like any other being. It wants to survive, and that lineage wants to thrive. You being part of that lineage, when you disconnect yourself from it, you become like a leaf that disconnected from a tree. We know leaves don't live without a tree. We disconnect ourselves from a life force that is given into this body, that is coming into our life with in many different ways, resources, talents, our gifts, and yes, of course, also our negative patterns of behavior. So the point of healing those patterns of behavior that we see in ourselves, that we sort of took from our relatives, is in us connecting to the lineage, because lineage wants to heal also. And you are the person who right now can help the whole lineage to heal. And because they want to heal, the lineage will be sending you energy and resources for that. So your healing will be much easier. You may be getting way more resources. Say, lineage now played out a game of luck, right? Lack of resources, poverty. And now with your life, you can start different. And your lineage can support you in that. Your lineage can help you connect and bring more resources. You also connect to your talents and gifts by reclaiming your lineage, because there are things that made you as you are that originated somewhere in the past. And by reclaiming our past and reclaiming the past of our lineage, we are reclaiming back those talents that may have been so far dormant. So do you see how it is actually important to connect to our lineage? And I think the way to look at it, and we can look at it from many different perspectives, and there's a lot of conversation that could happen, and maybe we will do them in the future. Yes, we reject some family members, but don't let that disconnect you from your entire lineage. And yes, you may know that that family member had, poor upbringing from and traumatic childhood from other, family members, etc., etc. So you may, I have clients who have horrible fathers, right, from a human perspective, and the grandfather, etc., etc. So we cut off that male line. But the male line is also our relationships with other people, our relationships with money. It's something that gives us structure. So we cut off ourselves from that energy in general. And you can't thrive without it. So right now we're not talking about accepting the patterns and the behavior and maybe some horrific things that your family members did. It's about reconnecting to the entire entity, to that energy vortex. And that energy vortex is, unless you have children, it's not going to, its goals are so important that it's going to be preventing you from doing anything else but first reconnecting with them and perhaps creating, bringing new upbringing, especially if the lineage is, say, dying off and there's not a lot of people that come after you, because it wants to survive. So it's going to put you in positions where, say, you have a goal of discovering yourself as professionally, but your lineage has a goal for you to give 3 children so that it can continue and it can thrive. Once you do that part of, birthing children, and it's not for everybody, but I'm just giving an example, then you may then experience yourself from a perspective of, and take on the goals and dreams that your soul wanted. So I hope this makes sense, how our soul is a part of the collective unconscious. And that collective is our family beyond just our most immediate family. And I think I want to leave this with inviting you to just invite this energy into your life. Just talk to it, perhaps in a meditation where it doesn't have a face. It's not a particular individual. It's an energy. It's something that fuels your life. It literally gives you your life force. And it's something that can really support you with discovering your life and thriving in your life. And will support you with your healing, because that energy wants healing. That collective wants healing. And you are meant, if you're listening to this video and it resonates, you are meant to reprogram and heal the entire lineage, so that, of course, your children don't take it and don't start replaying the same paradigms that you've been playing in your life and your ancestors. Also, if you have children and if you are blocking the life force that is coming through you from your parents to them, you're blocking them from that life force as well. Because that life force, it's hierarchical. It goes from the oldest to the youngest, and they cannot receive it if you are blocking it in yourself. And that's another reason why it's so important to connect to the entire energy. And say if you had some negative experience with your mother, then you most likely don't have this feeling that you belong or that you have a right to live in this world, and that you always sort of like, kind of like, oh, excuse me, sorry. If you have traumatic relationships with your father and it's unhealed and you still reject it, then you're going to have difficulties financially, professionally, as far as your purpose and your highest calling, expressing it, and also in relationships. So there is a lot of reasons why we need to dive back into, our family and our lineage and bring that energy back into our life. I think this is it for now. Let me know what comes to you when you think about this topic. I would really like to know. And we will definitely talk more about this. But for now, share your experience, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.